The Brandon Aiyuk 49ers trade saga has been really fascinating because around draft time, it was expected that the 49ers were going to trade this dude away to either the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Washington Commanders. However, the draft rolled past and Brandon Aiyuk was still a 49er. Then we go through OTAs. He doesn't show up. He still doesn't get traded. Of course, he doesn't appear at mandatory minicamp, but he's making TikTok videos saying how the 49ers don't want him. But the 49ers front office keeps reiterating how much they want to keep him, but they still have yet to come to terms on a long-term extension. Now, allegedly, the 49ers have offered Brandon Aiyuk an extension somewhere between $26 and $28 million a year. But it seems as if Brandon Aiyuk, he's seeking to at least get $30 million at the bare minimum. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the better wide receivers in the game. Really underrated. You can say he may be a product of Kyle Shanahan's system, but he's a really good route runner. He gets open. He's really reliable. And he's the best wide receiver on that team. Having a guy like Brandon Aiyuk helps out Deebo Samuel and the rest of that offense. And if you were to trade Brandon Aiyuk away, he still will put up the same numbers that he has been in San Francisco, but possibly better. This is somebody who has the capability to be a 13, 14, maybe 1,500-yard wide receiver in the right situation. You give him to the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, I guarantee you he gives you all-pro numbers as the wide receiver one. For Brandon Aiyuk, you definitely have to understand his frustration. I've heard 49ers fans saying that he's being greedy, he wants too much, he should be willing to do what it takes to win. I don't know why fans seem to be so disconnected between what these athletes care about and what they don't care about. They care about getting paid, getting as much money as possible for their talents. They don't give a damn about winning. There's only a small amount of players that actually care about winning championships. And most of those guys play on the Kansas City Chiefs. Having a championship ring when you retire is nice, but it's not something that most of these players care about. If you were to ask most NFL players which matters more, the rings or the money, 90% of them are going to tell you the money. As preposterous as that may sound, having championships when you retire doesn't exceed having life generational changing money and getting as much money as possible before you can't play football no more. As Lil Wayne puts it, too much money ain't enough money. When you go to negotiating your contract or your salary with your job, are you trying to take a discount? Hell no, you're trying to get as much money as possible. You don't care about helping your company out. You just care what you can get for what you bring to the table. Which is why I never understood why fans get so upset when players hold out and they ask for these large amounts of money. You want to get as much money as possible before you're pretty much given the boot out the league and you can't play no more. You only have so many years to max out the amount of dollars you can get. At best, you get 2 max contract extensions. The second one, if you're lucky enough, which is probably going to be near your 30s, you're probably going to get that second extension around 28, 29 years old. And if you're 30 years old, you can still get a max dollar extension, then that's a blessing. But once you get past 30, you're never going to see the amount of money that you would have gotten in your prime years in the National League or in the National Football League, which is why Brandon Aiyuk is trying to get every dollar that he can. You may look at $28 million a year and say that's not too far off from $30 million. Why is he tripping off $2 million extra? When you incorporate the taxes plus the cut that your agent gets, that goes from $28 million to probably 20-something million or 19 million, even less than that. The money that these guys sign for, they're not getting all of that. There's a lot of that goes to other parties involved. Brandon Aiyuk deserves to get paid what he's asking for. And if the 49ers can't pay him, it would just make more sense to trade him away. T. Higgins, they got him to compromise down there in Cincinnati only because the franchise tag is good money, but if he gets injured, then he's SOL, and that lowers his value on the free agency market. Brandon Aiyuk, on the other end, he's not playing under the tag. The problem with him is that his contract is about to be up, and he wants some long-term security. And if not, he wants to get traded to a team that's willing to pay that. The Washington Commanders will reportedly have reached out to the 49ers to acquire Brandon Aiyuk, and so have the Pittsburgh Steelers during the draft. But it looks like the 49ers really do want to keep Brandon Aiyuk around, but they're not willing to fork up that extra $2 million that it takes to give him $30 million a year. Is he worth that? To me, he is. It's hard to find true number one wide receivers. Brandon Aiyuk is one of those guys. When you run routes as good as what he does and create separation as much as what he's able to do, you're a true number one wide receiver. There's only about a handful of them in the league, and Brandon Aiyuk is in that really small category of them. And if you take Brandon Aiyuk off this 49ers team or last year's 49ers team, they don't have as much success as what they did, because Deebo Samuel is not the same kind of wide receiver that Brandon Aiyuk is. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the most important players on the 49ers. Probably the third most important player on that offense behind Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams. And Trent Williams wants to get paid. He wants a little bit of a big pay raise before he ends up hanging it up. The problem that the 49ers have is that they have too many mouths to feed. They have too many high-level players because they draft well, they develop talent at a really high level, and these are the kind of issues that you have when you're such a well-ran organization. You're going to have to let some talented players go, and you're going to have to trade some guys away. If the 49ers can't give Brandon Aiyuk the deal that he wants, it would be in their best interest to trade him, because the longer that you hold on to him, the less his trade value becomes. If you're going to let him test free agency, let him test free agency. Just go ahead and let him know up front. But if you have no intentions of being able to sign this dude, you would like to at least get a second-round pick for him or a third-round pick. You may look at that and say that's not enough. You want at least a first, but a second and third rounder is a potential starter depending on if you make the right pick. You already got Ricky Pearsall, who's good enough to be a decent replacement for him. Is he going to give you the kind of production that Brandon Aiyuk will give you this year? Probably not, but I don't think the production would be too far off. What's the point of drafting Ricky Pearsall if he wasn't the potential replacement for Brandon Aiyuk? The 49ers and this Brandon Aiyuk saga is nearing an end. They have until July 23rd, which is when the start of training camp kicks off. And most of these guys who are looking for long-term deals, they're going to get their answer if they're going to get that long-term security or not. And until then, the 49ers continue to report that they're working on trying to get him locked up for the foreseeable future. But it still seems like there's really big disagreements when it comes to the number and the annual salary. So I don't see Brandon Aiyuk being the 49er next year. I'll be really surprised if he ends up being on San Francisco's roster in 2025. This season, I think they probably keep him around to give it one more go at trying to win it all. But after next season, there's going to be a lot of changes on this squad, and there's going to be a lot of new faces.